The contagious sight. Imagine standing on a brightly lit stage in front of hundreds of expectant eyes. Suddenly, the performer right beside you collapses, gasping for air and convulsing violently. Within a few short minutes, one by one, everyone around you begins to drop in a terrifying chain reaction. There is no toxic gas, no spoiled food, and no bacteria or virus invading the room. The only thing infecting people with this painful condition is simply a glance. It happened in April 1989 in Santa Monica, California, during a music performance featuring hundreds of high school students. Backstage, the air was filled with nervous tension mixed with pride, but the show quickly turned into a chaotic medical emergency, starting with one student who suddenly began hyperventilating, feeling dizzy, and fainting. This strange outbreak instantly spread like wildfire across dry grass. Students one after another grew dizzy, exhausted, fell into extreme hyperventilation, and panicked. Ambulance sirens shattered the quiet night, and dozens of kids were rushed to the emergency room, leaving parents and school staff in total shock. A large-scale environmental investigation was launched immediately. Medical experts searched every corner of the stage, testing the water, food, and air quality. Yet the results came back completely empty. No toxins, no dangerous chemicals, and no biological pathogens existed. To find the truth, researchers surveyed 519 students, accounting for 93% of all participants. When analyzing every variable from standing position and medical history to the surrounding environment, they discovered a shocking fact. The strongest predictor of a student getting sick next was simply seeing or hearing a friend fall ill. This is a classic example of mass psychogenic illness. Facing extreme pressure and stress from the performance, seeing a close friend collapse triggered a short circuit in the nervous system. Through the unconscious mechanism of mirror neurons, fear spread instantly, transforming psychological panic into real physical symptoms. The 1989 Santa Monica incident was not just a strange medical event, but a chilling proof of the mind's power over the human body. It exposed a cognitive blind spot. The boundary between mind and body is far more fragile than we think. Sometimes, the most dangerous pathogen does not come from external bacteria, but springs from the emotional connection between people. Is your subconscious truly independent, or is each of us just a fragile link, ready to be swept away by the emotional storm of the crowd around us? Outbreak on screen. Ambulance sirens shatter the quiet air around 14 schools, as hundreds of students collapse over their desks in severe chest spasms. What could cause a massive health crisis like this, when the killer pathogen does not exist in the real world at all? It all began in May 2006 in Portugal, during a time when intense exam stress weighed heavily on young people. Just as the students' mental state was completely exhausted, the hit teen TV drama Morangos com Açúcar aired a dramatic episode. In that fictional story, a mystery virus swept through a school, leaving the main characters squirming with shortness of breath, dizziness, and bright red skin rashes. To the filmmakers, it was just a dramatic storyline, but for millions of young viewers, it became a dangerous psychological trigger. Just days after the episode aired, that fictional script suddenly stepped into real life in a strange way. Starting with a few students fainting at a local school, the wave of panic spread like wildfire across dry grass. In the blink of an eye, this bizarre phenomenon swept through 14 schools nationwide. Over 300 students were affected, with many rushed to hospitals experiencing non-epileptic seizures, tight chests, and red rashes breaking out across their skin. Classrooms were urgently locked down, and health officials frantically checked water supplies, ventilation systems, and took hundreds of blood samples to identify the killer bug. However, all advanced biological tests returned a shocking result. Every indicator was completely clean, with no bacteria or toxins present in the victims' bodies. The mystery was only solved when epidemiologists placed the medical records side by side with the TV script. They discovered a terrifyingly perfect match. The rash locations, rapid breathing, and clinical symptoms of over 300 real-world students mirrored every single scene played by the actors on TV. The truth was exposed. There was no biological pathogen. What infected these students en masse was a symptom script stepping straight out of a television show. The case in Portugal became a classic example of mass psychogenic illness. When the human brain is trapped in prolonged exam stress, the nervous system becomes extremely sensitive. At this point, the mind automatically borrows vivid symptom scripts from the media, as an unconscious way to release pent-up tension. This event leaves a haunting psychological lesson about the brain's ruthless power. It not only receives information, but can also turn fear into actual physical reactions, transforming a fictional illusion on screen into a real-world disaster. Bitten by nothing. Imagine standing in a noisy, stuffy garment factory. Suddenly, a sharp, burning pain shoots through your arm, as if a red-hot needle just stabbed through your skin. You frantically search for a poisonous insect, but your skin is completely clear. Just a few hours later, your coworkers collapse one after another around you, squirming with vomiting, dizziness, and shortness of breath. What is happening? It all started in June 1962 at a large textile plant in the American South, recorded in research under the code name Montana Mills. Amid the hot summer heat and the constant roar of hundreds of machines, dozens of female seamstresses were working to exhaustion during long overtime shifts. Just as their endurance hit rock bottom, a female worker screamed upon finding a bright red mark on her skin, claiming she was bitten by a strange bug coming out of a fabric roll. Within days, fear erupted like a domino effect. 62 garment workers collapsed right at their workstations. They writhed with severe nausea, dizziness, numb limbs, and bright red rashes breaking out on their skin. Medical teams and exterminators immediately locked down the factory, sprayed thousands of liters of pesticides, and carefully inspected every roll of fabric. Yet the results shocked the entire scientific community. The factory was completely clean. Not a single bug, parasite, or chemical toxin existed to cause such a terrifying outbreak. Faced with this eerie medical event, researchers Alan Kirchhoff and Kurt Back conducted a large-scale sociological study. They mapped out the spread and discovered an unusual pattern. This pathogen did not follow the transmission rules of viruses or toxins. It jumped along close social and friendship networks. If one woman groaned from a bug bite, her close friends sitting nearby or chatting with her regularly would be the next victim to fall. The truth behind the invisible bite was finally revealed through psychology. The Montana Mills factory at that time was like a giant pressure cooker about to boil over. Workers faced non-stop overtime under strict supervision, combined with heavy financial burdens at home. When their nervous endurance was worn out, the brain unconsciously flipped a circuit breaker. A normal itch or a harmless mosquito bite was instantly blown up by the mind into a dangerous biological attack. Through the nocebo effect, pure fear turned into real seizures, nausea, and skin rashes on their bodies. The June bug event closed as a haunting reminder of the nocebo effect. It proves that the human mind does not just passively experience reality. It is a scary architect capable of creating physical pain out of thin air. If a vague rumor can cause your body to break out in wounds and collapse, how much of the pain you feel every day is truly real, and how much is just a phantom created by your own brain? The copycat tics. How could a girl's strange smile or harmless facial tic turn into a contagious outbreak that knocked down dozens of teenagers in the same town? How could a terrifying condition spread rapidly across an entire community when every medical test confirmed their bodies were completely normal? It all began in late 2011 at Leroy Junior Senior High School, located in a quiet small town in New York State. Amid the familiar pressure of exams, a popular head cheerleader unexpectedly developed strange symptoms. Her face twitched repeatedly, her neck jerked awkwardly, and she uttered uncontrollable vocal sounds. At first, people viewed it as an isolated health issue, but in a small, tight-knit community where school concerns spread fast, panic quietly began to brew. In a short time, that doubt exploded into a real physical disaster. Students one after another began exhibiting facial tics, violent head jerking, migraines, and fainting right during class. The crisis peaked when 15 students and one adult relative fell into non-epileptic full-body seizures, leaving them unable to hold a pen or walk normally. The shocking news brought national TV cameras rushing to Leroy. Footage of teenage girls writhing in seizures flooded evening news broadcasts and social media, driving the entire town into madness with terrifying theories. From toxic chemicals leaking from a 1970 train derailment near the school, to a mystery virus eating away at the nervous system. Experts from the Dent Neurologic Institute and the New York State Department of Health immediately sealed off the scene. They conducted brain MRIs, detailed blood tests, and screened for environmental toxins in the water and soil around the school. Yet machine results left everyone puzzled. Every biological indicator of the victims was completely clean, showing no nerve damage or chemical traces. The mystery was only unraveled when doctors closely observed the patient's behavior and noticed a strange psychological rule. The tics flared up most violently whenever victims were in direct contact with peers displaying similar symptoms, or whenever TV cameras turned on. Conversely, when the students stayed home, disconnected from social media, and media attention faded, the seizures gradually decreased and disappeared completely without any neurological medication. The Leroy event revealed the first form of a digital outbreak in the 21st century. As teenage girls struggled under adolescent psychological stress, the mirror neuron system in their brains unconsciously copied the physical expressions of their peers to release built-up anxiety. However, heavy media and social media coverage acted as a dangerous magnifying glass, constantly feeding symptom scripts for the brain to turn into real physical pain. It leaves a haunting psychological lesson. In today's hyper-connected world, the trigger for a health disaster sometimes does not lie in the environment, but hides right behind the smart screens we look at every day. The phantom gas. Imagine you are a recruit standing in formation on a September afternoon in 1988 at the San Diego Military Training Center. Suddenly, a light cough echoes from the back of the line. Then another person clutches their chest and collapses. In a split second, a terrifying wave sweeps over like an invisible tsunami. Teammates who were as strong as steel are now writhing on the ground, pale-faced, gasping for air in desperation. But when you take a deep breath to check, you smell nothing except burning grass and sweat. Where did this nightmare come from? The story began at a harsh training camp where 1,800 recruits were enduring grueling physical drills under the scorching California sun. In this environment, stress did not just sit in muscles but soaked deep into every nerve cell, turning each recruit into a psychological powder keg waiting for a spark. That spark arrived in the form of a few initial reports of chest pain and breathing difficulty from a small group. Inside a closed military setting where survival depends on staying alert to any unusual sign, a rumor began as a whisper and spread at lightning speed. There is toxic gas in the camp. The madness escalated beyond control when, in less than 12 hours, the entire base fell into total chaos. Over 1,000 people, more than half the troop count present, simultaneously developed identical medical symptoms like a staged script. Ambulance sirens tore through the night as 375 people were rushed to the hospital in critical condition, their lungs feeling squeezed by an invisible hand. The scale was so large that top health agencies intervened, locking down the entire area for fear of an environmental disaster that could wipe out San Diego. These recruits were not faking it. Their heart rates spiked, sweat poured out, and their chests contracted forcefully. A surge of physical pain replicated en masse by the power of belief. When the truth was revealed, the medical world was stunned by a paradox. After thousands of blood tests, chest x-rays, and air molecular analyses in the camp, scientists found no trace of poison. Lungs that had screamed for oxygen showed up completely clean on x-rays. There were no bacteria, no chemicals, and no gas leaks. The final conclusion felt like a slap to our perception. The true culprit was mass psychogenic illness. All those terrifying symptoms were actually a chain reaction of fear, where a false idea about toxic gas triggered the brain's red alert system, forcing the body to produce real medical symptoms to match an imaginary fear. Looking deeper into the psychology, this is a brutal example of how social contagion can bend biological reality. When humans are under extreme stress and uncertainty, the brain switches to a constant threat scanning mode. At this point, confirmation bias turns a normal cough into proof of a chemical attack. We do not just see with our eyes, we see with our expectations. When you see the person beside you drop, the amygdala in your brain sends out a strong survival signal, commanding your lungs to tighten and your heart to race in response to an imaginary threat. The story of the San Diego recruits is a chilling warning about the power of imagination. When belief and fear merge, it can create a toxic gas more lethal than any chemical weapon, reminding us that the easiest fortress to break into is our own mind. Poison in a bottle. A bottle of soda is popped open. Before the familiar, pleasant fizz sound fades into the air, small bodies collapse onto the cafeteria floor in terrifying seizures. Children at a school in Belgium begin vomiting and shaking uncontrollably right after taking a sip of their favorite soft drink, turning a peaceful lunch break into a chaotic disaster scene. In June 1999, Belgium was living through dark days of food mistrust. Just weeks earlier, the dioxin scandal had swept the country like a storm when large amounts of highly dangerous PCBs and dioxins were found in egg, chicken, and pork production lines. Public trust in food regulators and the food system completely collapsed, like a sandcastle washed away by harsh waves. People saw poison everywhere, and every meal felt like a gamble with death. In this fear-thick atmosphere, at a small school in Bornholm, the initial spark ignited. A group of students reported strange symptoms after drinking Coca-Cola, severe headaches, spinning dizziness, and unexplained stomach cramps. The rhythm of horror sped up as news of poisoned soda spread at the speed of a computer virus on a biological operating system. From the first school, similar reports rushed in from 4 other schools across Belgium. The scale skyrocketed as hundreds of students simultaneously reported nausea, vomiting, and tremors so severe they couldn't stand. Long lines of ambulances with wailing sirens parked outside school gates, and children on stretchers created immense pressure on the government. Coca-Cola, a global symbol of joy and refreshment, suddenly turned into an invisible killer in the eyes of the public. The company was forced to recall millions of products, the largest recall in its history, as parents' anger erupted into a massive wave of protest across the media. However, when toxicologists ran tests on the sealed soda bottles, they found an astonishing truth. Aside from a minor error in CO2 processing at one plant that caused an off smell, and a tiny amount of fungicide on shipping wooden pallets, there were no toxins in doses high enough to cause such severe clinical symptoms. Blood and urine tests from hundreds of poisoned students came back unbelievably clean. It turned out only a few initial cases actually felt unwell due to the strange smell, but the fear virus took care of the rest. Seeing friends collapse while breathing in an atmosphere full of panic from earlier food scandals, their nervous systems automatically triggered a red alert, creating real, painful symptoms to match an imaginary danger. The 1999 Belgium soda incident became a textbook case study on mass sociogenic illness. This is a phenomenon where collective stress and anxiety are converted into real physical symptoms through the power of suggestion and confirmation bias. Humans are not just rational creatures. We are deeply susceptible to emotional contagion. When a community's trust is shattered, a small spark of doubt is enough to burn down all objective judgment, turning illusions into painful reality. This story reminds us that in a world filled with information and nameless fears, sometimes the most toxic thing isn't what we consume, but how our minds interpret the fear of being unsafe. When the shield of trust breaks, we become extra actors in horror scripts written by our own fear. The world is still full of hidden truths and stories that defy belief. If you're ready to uncover more of the most incredible and disturbing mysteries of our history, subscribe to Oddplain. Don't let the next story pass you by. Join us, and let's explore the unknown together. Thank you for watching, and stay curious. Goodbye.